Hey Fab, how's it going?
Great, yourself?
Good. So what I wanted to talk about with you today, and we
Yeah,
briefly spoke about it offline first, is
yeah,
we're often talking about sales and obviously all the different sales things you can do to make yourself better, and make sure that you're doing every aspect of what is important to move forward. But one
of
thing, I was
course.
having a discussion with an individual last week who's telling me, it's all fine and dandy for the traditional sales stuff, and you do great stuff. And he said to me, but a big part of my success in business has been through my website. So just
Right.
getting people to come through my website and order through there. So I'm a manufacturer of products, and I get people to come on and do that. And my question to you, and I know marketing is a huge animal, right? So
Yeah.
sales, we know that it's psychology, and you're following a very specific way of questioning people. And consultative sales, a lot of people have consultative sales
hmm
techniques, but it's very specific because it's all about talking to someone. So there's a beginning, there's an introduction. Whereas marketing, there's a lot of loops and ways of coming back. And my question to you is, let's say I'm a small, medium-sized business and I have a website and I'm getting some inbound. What is it that I should be doing first to maximize that inbound, to maximize the use of my website, to
hmm
to to create some form of SEO? What do you suggest to people? Because I know I've sent you people your way, and I'm just wondering, like, what would you do? What do you suggest to someone in that situation?
That's that's obviously a pretty big question, and I mean, in a way, that's almost the holy grail of sales and marketing, right? Where you're generating a big bunch of leads inbound, so that you or your salespeople, depending how big your organization is don't have to pound the phones as much, because the reality is it's in theory a lot easier to convert an inbound lead than it is to convert an outbound lead. And the reason being, an inbound lead probably has demonstrated some sort of an interest. So they already know who you are, right? As opposed to having to, pick up the phone and to say who you are and whatnot, and like generate some interest to somebody who might have like no interest at all in what you're talking about.
So let
There
me
you kind of, yeah,
let me make it more razor focused then.
gotcha.
Assume that you're selling a product, and that product, you get a lot of transactions on your website. So
Yep,
assume that you don't need to call them back. Assume that they're like, what do you do to get found? So
gotcha.
let's say I'm manufacturing furniture in Montreal, and a lot of people are buying furniture online. Maybe it's not a good example, but whatever it is that I might buy online, and I've got 10, 15, 20 competitors. What do I do to make sure that my website will attract more people, that I'm
Yep.
not just at the bottom of the trail and that no one ever finds me?
Yeah, so obviously, again, I mean, like the web is obviously understatement of the decade, but it's a big place, right? So, if you're lucky enough that you're in a niche industry, maybe an industry that's a little bit less, let's call it, attuned to like a lot of what's going on online, it'll be much easier to position yourself online, and then SEO best practices definitely play a big part of that. So making sure that you're so SEO has two components: the technical side of things, so making sure your website is well structured and well positioned and loads fast and is mobile optimized and secure, and then that your content is well positioned so that you're using keywords that your audience uses. So if I'm selling plumbing valves, let's say, well, I use the word like plumbing valves as opposed to like you know part 36550, right? That nobody would search
So
for, but
so
plumbing
basically,
valves they might search for.
so yeah, so SEO, so using smart words and things that
Yeah.
people do.
So, but then you get into some industries like you and I, which are obviously much more competitive, right? There's a lot of sales consultants, there's a lot of HubSpot and marketing consultants. And so then that SEO becomes more difficult, not unheard of, not impossible, but definitely more difficult to start. So I'm not saying that it's useless. You still need to have like a well optimized site and everything. That's still valuable. But I would also then that's where your branding component comes in, right? And we've talked about branding a lot of times, and I know a lot of people. You've been surprised a few times. We've spoken to some people, and it's like you should maybe focus a bit more on your branding component, because sales consultant. I mean, if you type in sales consultant now, like there'll be a million people, and Paul Fleur is probably on page 35 of the Google search results. if you're just searching for the generic sales consultant, right? And so what you need to do is to really be able to identify your people, to get people to know you as a company and as a brand, so that instead of searching for sales consultant, they're looking for Paul Lafleur or for questions or for something, right? Like something more related to you. And that goes through a lot of what we've talked about before, creating podcasts, sharing a lot of content on social. Yes, your blog posts and all that will be important as well. The benefit of a blog is that it also benefits your SEO. And so if you're in a competitive industry, you'll have a lot more work to do in terms of creating content, producing content, sharing content that's valuable. If you're in a less competitive space, and those are becoming increasingly rare, like probably some decent SEO, a good website where it's easy to buy from, and things like that will probably do a lot of the trick, right? But, to those industries, again, like you always have to watch out, right? If it's easy, you always have to watch out, right? Because easy means somebody can come in and dethrone you relatively easily as well, right?
So let's assume for a second that I'm in a niche product, right?
Right.
What would you say to someone? Look, I've just created a new niche product, Fab. I'm going to hire you to come help me start my website because I want people to. So is there a few pointers you could give us? Like, is it work on your website at the same time as you work on your social media, at the same time as you work on your podcast? Like, what would you tell that person? Brand new person, they've invented this gizmo that never existed before that brushes your teeth while you sleep.
Nice.
Without waking you up. What would you say to them? You say, okay, create a website. Would you say, jump on other websites? Like, what would be your approach? Say, hire you as the marketing VP. What would be the first thing you'd do?
Right. So, when you say niche product, we have to be careful, first of all, because like brushing your teeth while you sleep, like is actually a relatively competitive space, right? Because there's a lot of toothbrush, there's a lot of teeth, there's a lot of teeth care.
Okay.
So competitive is really a space where there's just not a lot of searches around it. So it's not because your product is innovative and unique that it's not a competitive space, right? So you can offer sales consulting in a very unique.
It's a very good point right there. That's a first learning.
So make sure that when you're saying it's not competitive, that it's just not a competitive space where maybe it's very traditional. Maybe there's some very established companies. Like let's say there's 2-3 established companies and most clients already have the company that they're working with. And, but all those companies are relatively lazy and not doing much online. And you feel there's an opportunity for you to run yourself, to show up. So assuming you're that, I would say, yes, definitely work on your site. Make sure your site follows all best practices, mobile responsive. If you do some e-commerce, make sure that you can buy from your site easily, and then identify the keywords that people would search for, the main keywords that you want to rank yourself for. Let's say plumbing valves or whatnot, and then that'll take care of a big bulk of it. And then if you want to. And then, you could definitely add in some paid components, some like AdWords. If you have some keywords that you're having a harder time ranking for, but you can position yourself well on, start paying for some ads. So like anything that's more direct response, SEO, paid ads, I would work on. And then to make yourself, how should I say that? To make yourself more indispensable, more unique. That's where I would start creating that content, right? I would start with, let's say, a podcast or a video show that you transform into a podcast, a bit kind of what we're doing right now, and start talking about topics that are important to my audience, right? So they don't necessarily have to be topics related closely to what I offer, but more, let's say, plumbing valves, right? I'm talking to plumbers, right? So what do plumbers care about? And I would create the show so that, because what you want to do is get people to listen to you, get people to know you. So yeah, if they're searching plumbing valves, they'll find you. But then they will also be like, oh, wait, this is Paul. Like, I knew Paul. I listened to his show, like, and this and that, right? So then you kind of become eventually the only option, right? And that's your kind of goal, is to remove all competitive thoughts from your clientele. You don't want clients that are shopping around, right? And as a salesperson, right? A client that's shopping around, well, and I know you have ways of like, as a salesperson to like mitigate that or deal with that. But if you have a client inbound that's coming in and all they want to do is deal with Paul's plumbing, and that's all they want, they don't care about anything else, and they don't care that you're 10% or 15 or 20% more because they know you're going to get a good job because you've already added a whole bunch of value to them through your show because your site is well done and all the other competitive sites are horrendous and stuff like that. That's where you win. So I would work on both angles. Yes, the transactional direct response stuff, SEO, paid, blah, blah, blah. And then I would work on the more branding stuff. So creating a show, getting in your heart, getting in the hearts of your audience before they even need your product.
Okay. All right. That's great. So that's interesting. So essentially, there's a few things you need to do at first, and you need to do them well. Now, my question to you, and it's sort of popping up in my brain, getting a website, you can get someone to help you, all that SEO, but that podcast or recording yourself, like some people are not good at that. So should they be hiring outside help to help them with that? Or how do you ensure that you've got like the right team to help you on that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I know we've talked about this in, I think, one of the earliest episodes that we have. So if you're listening, go back into the archives. But we talked about like producing content that you're comfortable producing with, right? So everybody's good at communicating, right? Whether they're good at writing, whether they're good at talking, whether they're good at being on camera, everybody has a way that they prefer communicating, right? And most people are comfortable having a conversation just
More
because
than
that's the
anything
reason.
else,
More than anything else, right? Because writing is not always that easy. And video, like a lot of people get self-conscious about what they look like and whatnot. So I think you could do it by yourself. I think where things get more challenging and where you might need extra help, not necessary, but where you might, is just the back end production, like, getting your podcast imagery up, getting the podcast distributed to Apple and to Spotify and to all those places, like sharing part of that content up on social and stuff like that. So if unless you're personally curious and you're able to do it yourself, and some people are much more curious and want to do it themselves and they like that process. If you're not, then I would focus on having somebody more helping me with that stuff. And even helping me like set up my meetings so that I can do my podcast, like I have a moment of the week where I do my podcast and stuff, like just help me organize, do the operational stuff. I wouldn't farm out like you do the podcast and it'll be like the Paul LaFleur podcast, but I mean, you have nothing to do with it. I would be really weary of somebody just taking it and doing it for you from A to Z, like you still want to be somewhere in there, or at least somebody on your team. Right.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I think it's been a really cool session, Fab. Let's end it here because I think we can spread this out over many more podcasts. But it's very interesting, and thanks for that. And I think what you're ultimately telling me though is you're probably best to have someone guide you in that process in the early steps.
I mean, it depends. Again, so I know some business owners that are very comfortable and curious with it and they want to do it themselves. But the reality is they're still not doing it. They're curious and they like this stuff, but they're still not doing it. And
do what you're good at, right? Like, why would you like focus on making your product or whatever it is you're good at and let the experts help you do the things that they can help you with, right? That's what I would say. Yeah.
And I think at some point, and I mean, maybe there's some marketing evaluation that can be developed around this. I mean, but there's definitely a block, right? Like there is a certain block, and there is a certain what people call a leap of faith, and I don't like that word I can't think of a better way to position it, where you're like, sales, right? If I call somebody, and we've had a show earlier on with Lindsay Riddell, and he would like tell us how he would go door to door and like really like put a lot of effort into identifying who potential clients are and calling them up and showing up at their day and this, as a business owner or as a salesperson that if I put in my activity, it will work at the end of the day, right? I mean, unless I'm I'm completely off the track, but in 9 times out of 10, it'll work eventually, right? Yeah. Whereas this impression that people have in marketing when we talk about things like podcasts and videos and this and that is like, well, yeah, but it doesn't work. Like, well, how many clients am I going to get from one podcast episode? Well, it's not the one podcast episode that's going to give you the clients. it's the body of work, right? It's not that Jimi Hendrix was well known because he had that one song. Like, he's known for his body of work and his overall,
yeah.
right? So there's that leap of faith where it's like, you know what, I need to invest in this. I need to start doing this. But there's that consistency element. And yes, we can accelerate the growth with what we were talking about before, which is like the paid stuff, like the Google ads, the Facebook ads and stuff like that. We can accelerate that growth. But I think there is, and that's, I think, the biggest barrier that people have with marketing is that they're like, yeah, but if I can hire a salesperson and I pay them $1,000 a year, and as long as they make more, well, I'm profitable, right?
Yeah.
Whereas marketing, there is that quote unquote leap of faith. But I think, and like the person that you were talking to, right? Like they said it, a lot of their revenue comes from their inbound stuff. Yeah, they probably didn't get a lot of it on day one, but over the years, as they grew, as they've improved their site, as they've improved their checkout and this and that, it's probably grown just by the fact that it's been there for so long. Yeah. So to me, marketing is about the long-term investment. Do you want to grow long-term down the line, or do you want to invest in the short term? And they're both important, but
yeah. No, and they're very good. Okay, so let's stop it here because we don't want to give too much in one episode because people get confused. So what would be the first, like, if I had to break it down to 3 things someone should start thinking of, what would you say? What are the 3 things that you would say to them?
Revamp your site, or at least make sure your site is well positioned for SEO and purchasing if you do offer an e-commerce option. If there's no e-commerce option, make sure that it's well positioned to get people to contact you. And 2, it would be invest in your start creating content.
Okay.
Honestly, that's all I would say. If you can start with those 2 things.
2. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Well, I think that was really good, Fab. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
I think that was good, and I think we'll continue that conversation later on. Maybe step 3 and 4.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul.